Portugal, there's a YouTube show full of fun facts you need to know. Carl rings the bell and the members show to the GMP morning show. Featured guests will come and they will blow your mind. The audience will do so in kind. The little vanity mixed with some insanity on the morning show with GMP.
Good morning, Portugal, and I'd like to welcome you to another fantastic day.
Hey, Gumpers.
Hola, bon dia, alegria. Munson here with the Good Morning Portugal show live stream and podcast. How are you doing this morning? Look at this on the bottom of the screen today, scrolling past for your consideration and erudite contributions on the matter. Are we living through an epoch-defining moment here, not just here in Portugal? Let me just turn down the studio volume. Still getting used to the new studio layout. Mrs. M will be joining me to discuss this matter at 9 a.m. But are we living through an epoch-defining moment at this point in human history? Now, humans might think that they are always doing that because it's a bit like trying to look in the mirror without seeing yourself. We can't be perceiving something without being there. And then we might have an overinflated or exaggerated sense of ourselves within that mix. But would you think that you're living in such a time? And if you are, as part of this community, as a Gumper, as somebody moving to or living in Portugal, how does that, or what impact can we make in that time? How will that affect us? How can we affect it? It's a big thought of the day. Mrs. M joining me at 9 to discuss, among many other things as well this morning, cat ownership. I've gone from owning no cats and never wanting to in my whole life to being a government identified, a bona fide cat owner. I was going to say cat lover. They can't make me, but they seem to be making me a cat owner with a little book that I'll show you a little bit later on. I do have a nice sweet video of my a new cat, as it turns out. I wasn't expecting that as a plot twist. I've got a little video to share with you in just a moment, and I'll be telling you more about said cat, Jenny, in a little while when Mrs. M joins us, who gave me a rude awakening. Not like that, unfortunately. She gave me a rude awakening this morning, which I'll also be taking her to task about a little bit later on. So we've got a few things to share with you, not least a 2-minute taster from Dougie from Silvish this morning. So he's not in Silvish this morning. He has been in Silvish. I think he might be heading back to the UK soon. He was in Silvish recently, and we still have wonderful videos coming from Dougie from his last few days here in Portugal, which will all immortalize, of course, over on gmpvip.com, learnaboutportugal.com. If you're a fan, and let's face it, who wouldn't be? Those 2-minute tasters, a lovely one here in Portugal. If you're a fan of those and you want to review them and rewatch them, if you're not in Portugal and you're missing your Algarve fix, you can do that with Dougie over at learnaboutportugal.com in his very own collection. Right, cat video ready. A video from Silvish. Oh, and one from Nazare from me the other day as well. Those to come. And of course, you in the chat. Pete's here with the Bon Dia Alegria. 835 kilos of olives picked in 2 days and delivered yesterday. Cream cracker. I'm not surprised. So maybe you can put your mind onto the existential question of the day then, Pete, given that your body is exhausted. I wonder if your mind is too. I imagine you can still spare us a wafer-thin opinion on this. Big, deep thought of the day then. I don't think we've got T-Duck with us this morning, taking another break. Are we living in and through an epoch-defining moment in human history? As I said before, we probably always think we are. But are things especially spicy? If this were a recipe, is there a little bit more piri-piri in the mix than there would ordinarily be? If we are living in an epoch-defining moment, what does that mean for the people in this community, the Gumpers, if you like, moving to and living in Portugal at this time, at this said time in human history? Let me know what you think about that. So yeah, well done, Pete. 835 kilos of olives in just 2 days. I'm guessing you must have had a bit of help from the community. Bon dia, Gumpers, from Coach Turner at what, 7:38 this morning. Tudo bem, espero, hoping all is well. First training session for 3 weeks this afternoon, so a relatively gentle start back. On your marks, take it easy and ease into it gently. That's my new starter order there. God Squad tip of the day then. I saw a post from the great Jamaican sprinter, Johan Blake, yesterday, who said, surround yourself with supportive people. Certainly in my experience, training works best in small groups. We tend to organize ourselves like that, don't we? If we're lucky as human beings, I think, like a squad, a unit of about 6 people. It's quite a good little unit, isn't it? A family unit, perhaps. It's quite a lot of kids, I guess, isn't it? But anything between one and 6 seems to be the basic unit of community, doesn't it? Depending on your circumstances. And then beyond that, it goes into 12 teams of that kind, where the dynamics change a little bit. And then it's said, I think, by that guy who wrote, is it called Species, Johan, whatever his name is, who seems to have gone to the dark side. He wrote about human beings being able to identify a community of around 150 people. And when it gets beyond that 100, 120, 150 people, a village basically, it takes a village to raise a child, does it not? And I think it's quite good for human beings too. But once it gets past that number, that's when we start to get a little bit more fearful and rely on instincts other than our trust and faith in other human beings around us. But I think certainly the squad, as in the God Squad, or the squad of a small group that Johan Blake might be referring to here, is very supportive, isn't it? People you can count on, bands of brothers and sisters. So not only continues Coach Turner do the individuals support each other, but the competitive spirit pushes them to better performances. Okay, so not so few that it's lovey-dovey and everything's good and all supportive, but just a little frisson of competition as well in that squad. Very good. Which I imagine an Olympic team is like that, isn't it? It also becomes an important social network. Yeah, you've got each other's backs, haven't you? You're pushing each other. A fine balance of sort of challenging each other and supporting each other. That's the basis of good friendship, isn't it? So finding an activity you enjoy that is part of a group will help enormously with motivating you to take part. That is the biggest part of the challenge of starting. The biggest part of the challenge of starting, as you heard it here with Coach Turner this morning. Thank you very much for that, Ian. Very good. Talking of groups, small groups, the meetup tomorrow, I think we're going to go back to Turno Brasso. Turno Brasa in Salir de Porto. I would recommend to people who are coming along to San Martino tomorrow to head to the car park in Salir de Porto and head there early and go for a walk and then come back, circle back to the restaurant. Why didn't I think of that before? We might go up the hill. We might go look at the chapel that overlooks the San Martino de Porto Bay if some of us arrive early, sort of 12-ish. Go for a little walk and then come back to the restaurant, who treated us very well, actually. And that one person, and there may have been others who forgot to pay for his dessert, went back. So I think we'll be allowed in tomorrow as well. Tomorrow, Wednesday, officially between 1 and 3. Nelson at Palmeira is closed until the end of this month. So we are a little bit valent and looking for other options, which we're taking as an opportunity rather than a threat. So Turno Brasa in Salir de Porto between 1 and 3 tomorrow. I will see you there, and maybe a little bit of walking. Keep an eye on the San Martino de Porto WhatsApp alert group, which I think I've renamed now. Always changing things. San Martino de Porto Grapevine, I think you'll know it as now, if you keep an eye on that to see what's going on, whether you're an active part of the group or you have some vicarious pleasure wherever you are in the universe, keeping an eye on that as part of that group. Cisco Kid, yes. I was going to go and listen to some more music by the band War yesterday. Didn't get around to it, but I will do, given that that's your name of the week. The Cisco Kid was a friend of Slug. Bon dia, Gampers, Feliz Terça Todos, and thank you, James, for that incredible, magnificent, and somewhat poignant and sad picture of a sawn down redwood tree on Facebook. Mindful moment from you this morning. Nothing in the past is as powerful as what we choose to do in the present moment, says Louise Hay. Yeah, we like a bit of Louise Hay here. Well, she made an incredible contribution, didn't she, to the world of personal growth, personal development. And of course, hers is the name, the eponymous publishing company, Hay House. So she is dearly departed. Oh, yeah, this being the, what are we? Are we on the second Tuesday of the month? I believe we are. Mama Bear would ordinarily be with us, can't be with us today. We will make reference to some of the subject matter that Mama Bear tends to talk about on the death and dying here in Portugal, and some news that Mrs. M wants to share from a friend, which I hope I'll check with her before she shares that with us. But it concerns people who have relatives in the UK, and a policy that a friend of ours sadly found out about for herself through her own rather awkward and sad experience. So hopefully Mrs. M will be able to, I'll have to mute the mic up when she comes in and just ask her quickly if it's okay to share that at this point. And I've got a little bit of an in memoriam as well for Chris Price, who's the wine eccentric, of course, whose funeral I went to on last Saturday morning. So I'd like to say a few words about Chris as well, having been to his memorial service and burial, the first of which I'd ever been to, actually, here in Portugal. So Aviva is here. Thank you for that, from that quote from Louise Hay there, the mindful moment. Thank you. More of those, please, James. Mindful moments. Happy to take those. I'm hearing a whining in the studio. It's not just me. Oh, it's Mrs. M's hairdryer. There was a time where if the hairdryer went on, other appliances would go out in the house. I think we're rated at the highest, if not the highest, the next one down. So that doesn't happen anymore. That was quite the thing to get used to when we first moved to Portugal. No toast and hair drying at the same time. Bom dia todos. I will be at my Portuguese lesson this morning. So hello to you when you watch this later, Aviva, because I'm sure you'll have something to say about the big, deep thought of the day. Are we living in and through an epoch-defining moment in human history? I would love to hear your thoughts about that. There it is on the screen for you now. Yeah, see you later. Let us know also how it goes at your Portuguese lesson. Where have you got to with that? João de Norte is here. Bom dia, alegria a todos. Road trip today, down for the meetup on Wednesday. Yeah, so we'll see you. I think we might have been there together, João, over on that side of the bay previously. I think there's a few people getting together tomorrow between 1 and 3. Looking forward to that. To be honest, says James, it feels like more of the same to me. Re your question. Fair enough. Fair enough. And I did offer that as some kind of caveat because it's only in asking it out loud to find out if I'm just firmly and only in my world of personal delusion. So thank you for that. Thank you very much, James. I wonder what others think about that. Hola, bon dia, everyone. Yeah, because when you've been around the block or the sun a few times and, you're a bit long in the tooth, I guess you'll have seen other things come and go that seem quite dramatic. And, you get an overall, a lifelong context, don't you, rather than a partial one. I'm not saying you're an old giffer, James, but I think you have got a few years under your belt upon which to reflect upon and times that you've seen in history come and go. Is that why you say that? I'm making a big assumption there. Hola, bon dia, everyone. Love looking at the wonderful picture of you and the maestro, the studio maestro at work, T-Duck. Lovely to see that, Owen. And I'm thinking we're going to see you tomorrow as well. You never own a cat. Yeah, that's what I think, Coach Turner. They own you. So what? So shouldn't the cat have a passport with my name on it rather than vice versa? Shirley, don't call me Shirley. Shirley, climate change is the biggest challenge for the world right now. That's certainly epoch defining. However you see that, there are, to set the scene, and I'll talk more with Mrs. M when she arrives about this. But yeah, there is what's going on with the climate. However you believe that, I know there's a range of opinions on that, but certainly things ain't what they used to be. So there's a change there, isn't there? What's causing it it seems to be the matter of some debate and argument and downright nastiness and polarity among people, like a lot of other things. Geo, what would they be then? So climate, geopolitical, geophysical, seismic, literally seismic activity at the moment on a scale which we're not normally used to, are we? Seems to be a bit of a peak in a certain number of markers that would have us or have me thinking we're in an epoch-defining moment. And then I stay up really late, and maybe it's being tired that does that to my mind. I walked the dogs really quite late last night. Went out to a beautiful sky, and that was a wonderful context and perspective bringer last night at around midnight. Or I stayed up writing a newsletter until about 2 this morning. And feel remarkably well on it. And again, that might just be delusion too. I might be running on, vapors of manic energy. But the sky was so beautiful last night. It was clear and crisp, and a little shooting star flew past in the corner of my eye, and I was humbled and inspired. It's a wonderful feeling to have, isn't it? Insignificant and magnificent to be part of this all at the same time. So. For me, there feels like there's something going on. Of course, the last few years have been unprecedented. That was the word that was used. The new normal, getting life, getting used to life as it is now, as it's been changed in this last couple of years. I think there's something going on. I know Mrs. M does, and she'll talk more about that. And then I thought I was having some sort of ethereal biblical moment this morning with a dawn chorus, but more about that when Mrs. M comes to join us at 9 as well. Joanna, hola, bon dia to you. Tudo bem? Good morning, everyone. I wish you a wonderful day. Thank you, Joanna. Great to see you here. Yes, so lots of love to the team there in Lisbon. I wish there was a little more than piri piri in terms of spice in Portuguese cuisine. Okay, so Pete's scaling it down into Portuguese cuisine rather than up into epoch-defining times, recipe-defining times for Peter in central Portugal. I'm sure we're in a defining moment for plenty of us, but here we are just enjoying jarapiga and chestnut. So he's putting the magusto into magnificence over there in central Portugal and enjoying the culture, which I think is entirely appropriate. I mean, don't get me wrong, Pete. I don't think we should be entirely focused on the boundary and the external world and being worried and concerned about that. I think we can do both, can't we? I think we can enjoy jarapiga and chestnuts. Otherwise, what's the point in being here? As well as being aware of what's going on and what contribution we might make to that. I'm sure you've got a view on British politics, certainly from yesterday. Are you glad to see David Cameron back in the British cabinet, the parliamentary cabinet? Hola, OLM. Hola, OLM. That's got a nice ring to it, isn't it? You've got a nice ring to you there this morning, Owen. We also enjoy proper olive oil. Yeah, I didn't realize that a shop only needs 15% first cold press oil to call it virgin, and that our mush gets hot pressed after our pressing to give you the stuff. I think I know what you mean there, Pete. It's probably a typical kind of marketing ploy, isn't it? Where you think you're eating extra virgin olive oil and they only have to put a certain amount of it in and then mix it up with other additives in there to warrant the name. And of course, when you pick your own olives as you've done and press them, and the video we showed of Jerry Lawler from Expats Portugal from his garden as well. It's the time of year, of course, isn't it, for olive picking and pressing. How lovely to be able to trust your local lagar to take the olives there and then to go and get your 5-litre plastic flagons of olive oil and be able to pour that over your own food. I'm just getting feeling quite romantic and nutritionally. I was going to say nutritionally well endowed. That's not a comfortable metaphor or description, is it? It just sounds lovely, basically, being able to pour your own extra virgin olive oil maybe over your own salad and tomatoes that you've grown as well, Pete. Enjoy. I noticed we've got some peppers. Still, peppers are growing in the garden. Even in our meager plot here, we've got a couple of peppers to harvest. I noticed the other day. Nature just keeps providing, doesn't it? It's you can't keep a good woman down. I was talking about nature and also Mrs. M, who's now stroking my shoulders here and distracting me massively. So you're going to be back with coffee in about 10 minutes?
That's what I was going to ask. Do you want coffee?
Yeah, I'm not sure there's much milk, Mrs. M, so I'll take mine black.
There is this.
All right, I'll have mine milky then. Thank you. All right. That claims to be oil. Okay, that was the end of, to give you the stuff that claims to be oil. That's the end of Pete's comment there about how they can cut it up with other stuff in the supermarkets. It's always good, isn't it, to find a local provider who you can trust and it's not produced in some massive facility somewhere else on the Iberian Peninsula and then brought to us over here. And I fell for it, didn't I, with one of those try something Portuguese olive oils. Thank you for your help on that, Owen, when I did that recently. And it had a lovely label that made me feel warm and fuzzy, like talking about Pete's extra virgin olive oil. And I think it was actually made in a huge facility somewhere, a lights out facility. But I think olive oil production has been checked a little bit recently, hasn't it? Because a few years ago, we were talking about those horrific machines that harvested at night and they were killing birds in the trees. And I think that those hopefully have been outlawed. See you at the meetup tomorrow. Excellent, Owen. See you there, mate. Great to know that you're coming along. Looking forward to seeing you there tomorrow. Just hope I get more than 7 kilos a litre rather than the 18 kilograms that our neighbour got. I will find out today. Just hope I get more like 7 grams a litre rather than. Why is that? Oh, I see. Right. Yeah, working that backwards. So does that depend on the species of olive then? I guess how plump and juicy they are and how well they lend themselves to the oil pressing process. Dougie is back in the UK, so I think we should celebrate with a two-minute taster in just a moment. Thank you, Doug, for all your incredible service while you just seeing your comments, Stephen White. Thought there was a funny smell in the studio. Back in the UK, we'll celebrate with your video of silverfish. And thanks for all the fish and all the videos, Doug. They will be in your collection at learnaboutportugal.com. Big Tony, you're right as usual, but I think we left it a little late. We have brined about 1/2 ton. Wow. And if we had harvested then, I think we would have done better. So is that Antonio saying to Pete, giving him a bit of advice as a local? Still a few more days to go, right? But Stephen White is in. Morning, Big Cheese. Queijo Grande. Thank you. I'll go with that. How's it going for you, Stephen? Have you got, hoping to see you soon. Stephen, have you got any workshops or online webinars or anything like that coming up? You're always welcome to share them here. A very smart young fella is Stephen. I hope you don't. I don't mean that in any patronizing way, Stephen. You are smart and you're young and you're a fella. So I'm calling you a smart young fella, and I really admire what you're doing and how you encourage others into the world of property investment and development here in Portugal. Before we continue, says Pete, we will see what conversion we get from the press. I am not picking more if it is anything over. Oh, I see. Very good, Pete. You're not just chucking everything in like an olive oil casino. You're doing a test first to see if it's worth pressing the rest of it. And just you two, you and Diane, and one helper. That's amazing, Pete. No wonder you're knackered, mate. I think now is the best time to have dual citizenship. Okay, so to the big question of the day then, are we living in an epoch-defining moment? And what does that mean to us, those of us who are moving to and living here in Portugal? With the way BRICS is gaining more followers, and it's not just those, 5 countries there, is it? That's an alliance of more countries than Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. I think the Western world is not going to be strong financially anymore. That's a sobering thought, isn't it? And if that's true, how do you prepare? I think Stephen has some answers to that. The only times I picked olives, says Antonio, I was sweeping, is that the right word? Sweeping the branches with a long stick to bring the olives down. Damn tiring. And it was December or January. So a late picking. That's probably up north, isn't it? I imagine that's up in your beloved Trás-os-Montes up there, isn't it, Antonio? It's more a general sense of slowly increasing apathy over time. I attribute to a general sense of decreasing power to change anything as we move forward. Yeah, I'm not suggesting you try and change anything either, James. You know, I'm very interested in what you have to say on this. I'm getting top notes of apathy there from you, possibly. I'm sure you're very able to speak of a mental adjustment we might make to the situation, if indeed it is a situation that we're talking about, because that's the first part of the question, isn't it? Are we actually living in an epoch-defining time? And then, you know, you've got the secondary part, the supplementary part of that question, should that prove to be true. Not me, but the world in general. Okay, so that's not you that's apathetic. It's you. That's your description of the world. Thank you, James. Tor, good evening. What am I? Okay, yes, so that's the 4 hours of sleep kicking in now, isn't it? Good morning is what I meant to say. Bon dia mundo in Almada this morning in thick fog, soon sunshine to everyone, I hope. And it can clear very quickly, can't it? You're on the river there, basically, aren't you? Or near it in the estuary, Targush Tejo estuary in Almada, and it can feel like another day. It can go from autumn and winter into spring and summer in that part of the world, that's for sure. Speaking of epoch-defining moments, João de Nort, adding to our conversation here this morning, going to a friend's house in 1979, 15 years old at the time, and being shown his Apple II, and this dangly bit he said was called a mouse. Yes, I remember the first time I saw a video on a computer, I was really taken aback by it. And I wonder if that meme is still on the screen from yesterday. But you know those pens with 4 coloured inks in them? I still haven't got it on the screen still. But a pen with more than one colour of ink in it. That was amazing, wasn't it? Will Thompson is here. And I'm sure Will has something to say about epoch-defining moments. Good morning to you, Will. Thank you for being here this morning. Pete, I am sure you know me by now. We have an electric tickler. Oh, is that a multitasking bit of kit, possibly? Or is it just for olives there, Pete? And a machine that pops the nets around the tree and they fall into baskets, and a machine. Why are you knackered then, Pete? Sounds like the machines did it all yesterday. But best of all, I have kind and generous friends who help pack it up and deliver it to the lagar. News just in, Mrs. M. Pete's got an electric tickler.
Really?
Yeah. Yes.
Does he use that with Diane?
I don't know. I'm not going to say that out loud. And hopefully you didn't hear that comment from from the side of the screen there. Yes, on November the 18th in Lisbon. Okay, well, give us, that's a network. Give us more details, Stephen, or send them to me and I'll stick them up on the screen. Networking event for property entrepreneurs. Thank you, Stephen. I think this question has brought a few people to the screen who would not normally be here. Are you joining me now? Sure. Okay, would you like to grab my stool?
I'd love to.
Okay, we're just having a little bit of a move around. We are now, you don't want like the pile cushion, do you? It's not really a pile cushion, is it? Okay, right. So we're just jigging around in the studio, as we sometimes do.
We've got coffee to share.
A coffee? Why? Because there's not enough milk?
Yeah, you were right.
Yes, it's all right. I won't gloat or anything like that. So hold on a minute. Oh, there she goes. It's good. Nice to have a microphone, isn't it?
Yeah.
Are you hearing yourself as well?
I sure am.
Okay, good. I'm glad you're here this morning. Sadly, Mama Bear McGowan can't be with us this morning. Is it okay for you to talk about that bit of news you had that came from a friend?
Sure.
Okay.
We won't say who the friend is.
No, okay, but let's come back to that after 9 then, because I've got a few more hellos to do and a bit more scene setting to do.
Ooh,
and we've got to get the screen right, haven't we? Get it balanced as well. So if I move that way a little bit. That's nice, isn't it? What do you think?
That's perfect.
Do you like? Is the lighting suitable for you, Mrs. M?
It's good enough. It's perfect.
So no. Oh, it's perfect. Okay.
It's perfect.
It's good enough, she says. Okay, so Pete's tickling machine. That's where we got to.
Yes. What is that about? Well, that's a nice picture of Owen and
it's beautiful, isn't it? And
T-Duck.
there. Those machines speed up the process and save money from employees, but will ruin the trees in the long run. Yeah, Pete. There's always ups and downs in everything.
I thought you were, when you were talking about,
picking.
I thought you were talking about some kind of Ann Summers
tickling
machine.
Don't be vulgar.
Right. So you're tickling the trees.
That's how Pete picks his plump little fruits.
I wondered what you were going to say then.
He's tickling his plump fruit such that it falls into a net. And then
net?
Can be
I'm pretty sure
Pete's
Diane
plump fruit
like
is fallen into a net. Sounds like a Tory MP. I do not know how my plump fruit fell into a passer-by, but I'm taking some time off to be with my family now.
Yeah.
And look, as Antonio says, there's always ups and downs and everything. Well, hey! Okay. Oh, typical. Mrs. M turns up and it turns into Carry On Portugal. Paul Williams is here. Bon dia. Hope to see you soon in San Martino de Porto. Lovely misty morning here today in the pretty much dead center of Portugal. Paul, aren't you in the gravitational center of Portugal? Didn't we have that conversation once upon a time? Ticklers are fine, Tony. It's the machines that shake the trees that damage them. Okay, so I think Pete is finding a sweet spot between some very vigorous shaking of the trunk.
There's no way to talk about this. There is
a light tickling. I have put this question, Mrs. M, that I'm hoping you'll go through with me and consider. Big deep thought of the day. Then, are we living in and through an epoch-defining moment in human history? That's why I called this, what's going on, as Marvin Gaye once said. And if we are, because that's the important thing, are we living in an epoch-defining time? And if we are, what does that mean for the people in this community moving to and living in Portugal at this time?
Flipping it. Pull out the big guns. Why don't you?
Well, yes. That's no way to talk about yourself. I can help, James. He remarked on a general sense of apathy. Less ability to change anything. Will Thompson is here. I would also be apathetic, but I can't be bothered. Very good dad joke there on the big thought of the day. We discussed it before. We discussed this in 2020, the fourth turning. Yes, João Denort and myself have made a video and looked at the fourth turning. I think that pretty much captures the zeitgeist. Will loss of faith on captured institutions. That's a pithy one-liner, and I can go with that too. Andrew Bridgen in an empty parliament, for example. Yes, all of this adds to my echo chamber. I mean, Andrew Bridgen was literally in an echo chamber, wasn't he? Which then fed my echo chamber as a sign of what I think is going on. I told you to watch Star. Oh, don't start. Will, I do try and watch Star Wars from time to time. And the biggest takeaway, as Mrs. M is sick of hearing, is I think the world is like the bar in Star Wars, isn't it? That's what the world is like. It's full of people, some of which you would like to sit and drink with, and others who have their arm cut off by a lightsaber, metaphorically, by when it gets a bit eggy in the bar. I think that's maybe the best we can help for is a peaceful coexistence and knowing where the boundaries are.
I need a long ruler. Not
as
to
in
smack you, but
is Prince Charles not tall enough for you? Okay, it's a networking event in Lisbon then for Stephen, for people wanting to meet other investors, contractors, legal teams, and accountants. Are you going to use that ruler to hit me? Point at something on the
point
screen?
at the comments. I can't
You need
reach them.
you need a laser pointer, don't you?
Yes. Where do I get one?
We have got one of those. Is it not in the kitchen? Okay. Annette sounds very accommodating if she can take 30 kilograms at a time. Pete getting in with the spirit of Carry On Portugal this morning. There you go. So it's not just the 5 countries. Was I right about S being for South Africa? The BRICS Alliance, a new kind of empire, is 32 countries, 37 in total. So that makes it bigger than the European EU bloc, doesn't it? Oh, cheers, Pete. I've got some pictures that have come through for harvesting, Pete, Di, and Annette. And wishing everyone well, no matter what's happened. What matters most is each other. Hold on to community. Will Thompson, that is beautiful. Thank you very much, Will. Much appreciated, that sentiment there. Lots of love to you, mate. And nice to see you back on the screen here. And yes, right with you on that sentiment there. Mrs. Emma's come in with a wobbly. Careful. Has that been in Annette? Hopefully not.
But
okay.
It's so that I can.
All right. Well, I'll get to them in the end anyway. Yeah. Be patient, Sagittarian woman. Okay, we're both on the screen with you this morning, trying to, first of all, to establish if this is an epoch-defining moment. We'll come back to you in Mrs. M as you take a quick breath in, about to answer that. I've got a couple of videos to play. Thanks, Doug, for this. Let's have a quick change of scene. We're going to pop to the Algarve.
2-minute tickler. Very lovely, jolly, lovely boy.
Good morning, Portugal, and it's a jolly fine morning right here in the Algarve. Time for one of our 2-minute tasters.
Never fails to fascinate, doesn't it? All the artifacts that they manage to find, and some of them in such amazing order.
I love that tune so much. That's made by a mate of mine in Sheffield in the UK. House of Tonic and Silly, nicely mixed with your images from Silvish there. I think DJ Mink is on that track too. I'll have to find out more, maybe get Kenrick on the show. But that is our current tune of the moment and nicely woven into the pictures of Silvish there. More to come from Doug in the next few days. Thank you for all the 2-minute tasters. And it's a jolly fine one as well. Jolly fine collection of 2-minute tasters over at learnaboutportugal.com. Speaking of misty, moisty mornings, it's a perfect time for the Old Mother Goose poem. Go on, then. I don't know that. Are you going to phone in and do that for us, João Denort? Heading out, says Owen, for a mini tour of Lisboa. With the wonderful Katia Beyond Lisbon Lima. Oh, that sounds good, doesn't it? Have a great day, everyone. Excellent stuff. See you tomorrow. Okay. I also have a cat video now, Mrs. M, and some. Well, maybe do the Nazare waves as literally a palate cleanser if the conversation gets a little bit
So you've got some contingency videos in
I
case
do, yeah,
I
as
dry
a
up.
kind of timeout. No, not in case you dry up. In
case you have to put
in
me in
case the
timeout.
conversation gets very spicy with you here. But you will
Well,
love this
I did
because
get a video banned this week, didn't I?
yeah, but it got banned this week, but you published it ages ago.
I published it 3 years ago.
You did, didn't
Yeah.
you? Okay, so here's my cat video. You wanted cat videos, you get cat videos. This happened this morning, and there's more to say about this, which I also think
Go on, where's your
is
passport?
a sign of the times. Yeah, I'm going to talk about that. But first of all, you need to see this beautiful creature, my lovely cat. Okay, we can talk over this now. I've unmuted. I think everyone can hear us.
This is the cat that just walked into our house one night, yowling.
Yep. And I was the only one who had an
Do you know what?
affinity with her. She
looks
looks very round still, doesn't she?
She looks very pregnant.
Yeah.
I think we should get her wormed. Just in
Ooh.
case. I mean, she's obviously not pregnant.
She's been
so,
done, everybody. That's,
yeah, she's been spayed.
Maybe it's
so-
the hormones still working.
So
there.
why is she
But hold
so
on, listen.
round?
Can you hear what she's looking at? You know what she's looking at, don't you? From that tail movement.
Is she going to go
Leap out the window.
like cats do?
Yeah, she did actually.
What's she looking at?
Did you hear that little?
Oh, yeah. Portuguese cats.
What are they like? Oh, look. Oh, have I got clothes on? No!
Get it off. You Wally.
I was in the bathroom naked. I was in the bathroom naked with a cat. No, it's not like that. I can explain.
Big Wally.
The cat came into the bathroom.
Go on, are you going to tell them about?
No, I want to find out for you. I will come back.
story
I will
of
come back to
cat
the
adoption.
moment, a terrifying moment when you have to sign for something from the local authority. Postman wants ID and makes you sign and copies and photographs your ID and then gives you a document. And you're thinking it's a subpoena or a summons to court for a fine I didn't,
A fine you didn't know you hadn't paid.
Exactly, from 3 years ago, and now it costs €700 or something with everything else on it, and you've been called to court to pay it and face justice. Wasn't that? It turns out it was a cat passport, but I'll come back to that because I think it's a massive liberty. And it's right what Coach Turner says: cats own you, you don't own cats. So the cat should have a passport with my face and name on it, not the other way around. Okay, Mrs. M.
I'm hoping that cat's going to help us with reunification.
That's true. If the cat's got a Portuguese passport,
does that not make us
we
her
are,
family
we are
as her guardians?
Very good. I like the way you're thinking there.
Yeah.
And maybe it's a precedent others can follow as well. Mrs. M, big question of the day, deep thought of the day. I've kind of left you hanging there long enough considering this, pondering this. Are we living in and through an epoch-defining moment in human history at the moment?
I don't know, is my answer.
Brilliant.
I could have saved you so much time. I mean, my immediate thought is we will never know, because how can we compare it to other times?
Right.
All we can compare it to is what we've been told has happened. But given the amount of bullshittery that happens in the world now,
I'm not familiar with that technical term. Okay.
Like when we find out stuff that hasn't been accurately portrayed by the media and by governments and stuff like that.
Well, that's always
why would you think
nothing
that
new there?
History that we've learnt about in schools is actually accurate also?
Oh, so you're going there. Okay.
So how would I know if we're living in the sort of like
no, I don't. You know me. I'm not that interested in that sort of speculation.
I mean, we've come into. Sorry to interrupt. Actually, I'm not sorry, but we've come. We've all been born into this time, whether we like it or not. So
exactly.
I like to think of it as we're here anyway.
Yes, that's true.
So we need to make the most of what's
now
going
you're talking.
on.
Now you're talking. So you ask questions about education, politics, and the media.
Yeah.
And everyone's got a view on that, which is quite different to we are here now. I mean, that's harder to argue, isn't it? Let's make that assumption.
Well, I just think in
notwithstanding some spiritual existential nuances, we are here now.
I really honestly think within the next 5 years, if not sooner, I'm hoping in the next 6 months, that everyone realizes, or that we all learn, or there's some big reveal that the news, which we have taken
what's
as
that long-awaited moment? Disclosure. You're talking about disclosure, aren't you?
Yeah, but disclosure, to some people sounds like, the disclosure of alien life or something like that.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about the disclosure of actually, okay, guilty as charged. The news is actually entertainment.
But we knew that anyway, didn't we?
No, no.
Do you mean
Like,
disclosure as in lots of people realizing that en masse?
I mean, it sounds like sacrilege to say that, but years ago, people used to believe that WWF, the World Wrestling Federation, or
and British wrestling,
people used to think that was legit, and it was really, real.
What you saw was actually happening.
Yes,
it wasn't rigged. Or
and
fixed.
then not so long after, we realized actually, it's a big story. It's a big show. It is show. I mean, all these people are actors. Like people who, are acting in media and movies and stuff like that. What makes you think that they're actually? Well,
they say they are anyway. Movies for a reason, aren't they?
Yes.
I mean, we know it's the work of
like
fiction.
We are surrounded, like television. We are surrounded by all sorts of images, and for some reason, we think some of it's entertainment. Then we think some of it's factual, and then we think some of it's science, and some of it's history, and some of it's this, that, and the other.
Compartmentalized knowledge of our existence.
So like some of it we believe, some of it we're entertained by, some of it we think is actually an accurate depiction of what's going on in the world.
Yeah.
And actually, we might find out that it's all entertainment.
Okay, so
that's what I think.
To you, that's
to me. I'm not expecting everyone to agree with me.
So if that is true, and anthropologists of the future and historians see that that's true, this could be called the Tanner zone or something like that.
No. It would be something.
The Louisa-phonic era.
No, because I'm not the only one that thinks that. There are lots. I mean, interesting that Sarah says choreographed.
Okay, so not only is it fabricated and made up, it's kind of coordinatedly so.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, you can actually there are clips of news reporters reporting. Hang on. Same thing, no, that's not what I was going to say, Mr. Jump right in before you find out what I'm going to say.
That's not like me at all.
That's so much like you. There are videos online of news reporters reporting live from somewhere.
Yeah.
And then you see that there's a green screen and a wind machine, and they're pretending to sway whilst they're recording about a hurricane or something like that. There's loads of footage of just like that.
Well, so it's show business. Okay.
And so when you realize that the news reporters have the same technology as people that are making films,
all right.
And we now find out that there are clones. People doing cloning technology.
What?
Well, I mean, by clones, I mean like AI images of people.
Yeah.
And you can use AI to deliver a message, and you could put an AI mask over somebody to deliver a message.
Okay. In fact, we're talking about
and
AI
voice
tomorrow.
modulators and things like that. So you really don't know if somebody is actually the person saying the thing that's being said.
So may I summarize?
Why would anyone in their right mind believe that everything that is actually on the news is actually legit?
Okay, so may I summarize that by saying all is not what it seems?
Yes.
Within those departments of humanity?
I think so.
And the epoch-defining moment for you, at least, then, is that will be discovered and people will be responding to that. Is that right?
I suspect when it first gets discovered, some people go, oh, and then other people go,
but I'm asking you about whether there's an epoch-defining moment coming up, and is that what characterizes it?
To me, it feels like there is an epoch-defining moment. I mean, there are clips of politicians around the world on TV, and in some of the clips, they've got like fleshy earlobes, and in others, their earlobes are a different shape.
I get all of that.
So at some point,
you don't need to give me any more examples. Okay. I do get what you're talking about. That from your point of view, you are seeing that people might be being manipulated in a way that they're not necessarily realizing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And for you, that is what might form part of this
defining moment,
or what might be causing, or that will be revealed during this time, which from your point of view, because of that, is an epoch-defining, creating moment.
Well, I think actually there might be a bigger epoch-defining moment, which is it's becoming really obvious that there are lots of inconsistencies everywhere, and I think there might be like somebody will draw a bigger line next to it. Something big will happen,
and that's what's causing
the distractions are getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah, but so there's two parts to this. There is your assertion that that's what's going on.
Yeah.
And another part of it is that you're suggesting that more people might find that to be the case, and then we will be in a world of that reaction. Is that the epoch for you?
I already think that people are starting to feel quite uncertain and
because of
wary.
that, or anyway?
No, I think the sense of it. You get a sense. When you're in a friendship with somebody and you get a feeling that they're not being straight with you.
Yeah.
That feeling is sort of imperceptible at the start. It's just like a little tickle or a little whistle, like a whisper in your ear. And over time, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger before you start to take action.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I think there are lots of people at the moment. I mean, why are there so many people that it appears to us right now? There are lots of people moving to Portugal.
I'm not asking you to justify yourself.
No, I'm not. I'm not justifying myself.
I'm open to yours and anyone else's view of what's going on.
There's a lot of people with
what I'm most interested
the urge to move. There's a lot of people who are feeling uncertain and are wanting to change their lives. They're looking for more clarity.
Okay, and so
I'm not surprised that they're coming to a less commercialized place, a place where things just seem a little bit more. But no offense to any Portuguese person that's listening, but it seems a little bit fresher, a little bit more innocent than some of the other places.
Or less cynical.
Less cynical.
And less manipulated, you could say, I guess.
It appears that way.
Okay.
I'm sure it's not. But
so thank you for relating that to our life here then, because that is the second part of the question. If we are living in an epoch-defining moment, what do people who are moving to Portugal, living in Portugal, do about that or make of it? So thank you. I get your sense of it, and your analogy of feeling uncomfortable because the friendship that you have with someone is not what it appeared to be. Are you suggesting that's how people feel about society and the world they've grown up in? They have that sense of unease. I think it's not what they thought it was.
I think like institutions that people have trusted.
Yeah.
I think it will be like a really bad marriage. Like if somebody realizes that the news isn't gospel, that's going to create a massive emotional trauma for somebody who has lived their life according to the news.
So that's the epoch of realization, perhaps then, or will that just be a symptom of the times we're going to be in?
It's like a death, isn't it? In fact, I'm actually doing a show about this, not specifically about our reality not necessarily being true, but I'm talking to Donna and Jenny on Thursday.
Yeah.
Jenny came from the NHS and worked as a top nurse and a top recruiter for the NHS.
Yeah.
And she has her own realizations and thoughts about how things are managed within the NHS.
Mm-hmm.
And, for when organized healthcare comes into its own, and also when it's actually a bit invasive and not necessary. So she's got some very strong views based on decades of experience. And then I've got Donna, who found out she was adopted, and she works with people who find out after a lifetime of believing their life was one way, then finding out that everything that they were living their life by was made up.
And this is another example of the times you
it's like finding out your partner has cheated on you, or something that you had absolutely trusted and had opened yourself up to being vulnerable to.
Which is devastating, isn't it, for anyone who's gone through that? Yeah.
Well, we were talking about yesterday, like what happens to children, and so many children and so many people that are listening right now will have been in this situation.
Yeah.
You find out your mum and dad are about to get divorced or separate.
Yeah.
That's a collapsing of the world that you think is your world.
Okay, so just to bring you back to the point here, is that's what you think is occurring for you.
I think that is occurring
your view
around
of
the world right now
is that people are maybe seeing a new and disturbing view of how the world is that they hadn't realized before.
Yeah.
And that is a collective matter at this time.
Okay, let it get just a little bit more. You said there was a moment to kind of link it into some spiritual values, or
I'd like to.
I want to underpin it. I want to underpin it because, there is this concept that what is happening out there is happening inside, as above, so below, inside, outside, etc. So for people who aren't realizing or coming into their own knowing that that's going on in the world, you may find that their inner worlds are collapsing and changing. You know, everyone I'm encountering right now in the work that I do, and it might be because I've got a bias for it and people search me out because I already have that kind of listening. So I'm aware of that, but so many people are coming to me right now who are having realizations that all is, you know,
not as it seemed.
All is not as it seemed. So I think this is I think you've
made your case well. I mean, so we could go for disclosure, couldn't we? Or we could, or revelation. You know, things are not as people imagined, and on a wholesale and individual basis, that may be the case, and that for you is part of this. Would appear to be a case to say that we are living in an epoch-defining era, and that is a characteristic of it, an overwhelming one.
I really like Joelle Denault's comment.
Okay, well, I'll get to those. So let's do that. Let's see what people are saying. Let's scroll back a bit rather than you have me pick up various ones and lose my thread of the comments. No, stop it! Don't. Okay, Filomena, good morning to you. Bom dia a todos. Parabéns. Pete Belas Dush Isatonos. Yes. Good luck. Not good luck, but well done on your plump fruit, Pete. And Squire of the Shires, morning Squire's here as well. Triumphing with the olive harvest. Great job, Pete. And Pete conversing. Look at that. If you want to learn a bit of Portuguese with Pete there as he talks to Filomena, get involved on the screen as well. Joelle Denault. Yes, so the Old Mother Goose poem, I think, has been shared with us. Thank you very much. 'Twas a misty morning. It was a misty, moisty morning when foggy was the weather. I chanced to meet an old man all dressed in leather. What sort of party is this? He began to compliment and I began to grin. How do you do? How do you do? How do you do again? And on it goes, I think, until repeat as necessary.
Is that
twice after meals? That is the poem. Yeah.
Oh, wow! Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And this is not a serving suggestion for the aforementioned meals. Yum, catworms with fresh virgin olive oil on there. It's a bum deer. That's rude. That is rude. Who's saying that?
I don't know, but thank you.
That must. I think that's Frank, isn't it?
It might be.
Yeah, it's the giveaway Cuddlito there. Morning to you, Frank. How are you doing this morning? Morning, Munson from Sarah Taylor. Good morning to you, the Taylors. And it should be, this is a different, is this a different FU Facebook user or the same one? Is it Frank? It should be a brilliant morning for most Brits. The criminal figure of Braverman is gone, albeit temporarily, from toxic political scene. Yeah, they've really refreshed things by bringing David Cameron back, haven't they? Wow. Bon dia from Pam. I'm sure is shocked by that news. Just stopping by to say hello on my way out to work.
Good morning.
Thanks, Pam, for dropping in. Martin Templeton. Good morning to you. The brilliantly named Martin Templeton.
Great name.
It is a great name, isn't it? Martin Templeton. Bon dia from rainy France. Is it not the screen age? Yeah. That's epochal, is it not? That we are in the screen tech age. And tomorrow I'll be talking to a young man. That's patronizing, isn't he? I think he's younger than me. So on that basis, again, like I said,
so he's
about
like
Stephen,
in his 40s.
yeah. I mean, a lot of people are young compared to me these days.
I described somebody in their 30s as a young adult.
A whippersnapper. Did you really? Like, how patronized did they feel?
What a muppet I was being.
Well, Corey is good. Well, however old he is, and in relation to me, he'll be joining us anyway. He said, "Can I do?" He
called him a young man.
No, not to his face. Oh. But if he's watching this now,
around your age, isn't he? Maybe a bit.
No,
he's in between our age.
He'll be more offended by that than me calling him a young man.
I suspect he's between our ages.
Do you? Okay.
Do you think he's younger than me?
I don't know, and I want to move on to say that he said, "I'd like to do an AMA about AI." Now, AI, of course, I understand that. Well, I understand what the words mean. I don't really understand all of the implications. That's the reason why he's doing an AMA, which is Ask Me Anything. He works in that field, and he'll be joining us tomorrow to talk about that. Corey will be joining us. Coincidentally, lives on the other side of the bay. A fascinating fella talking to us about AI tomorrow. And yeah, Martin, that would, for a lot of people, that would signify this age, wouldn't it? Technology, AI, screens, digital, bloody blah, that sort of thing. The best description I ever heard of commercial television was audience delivery system.
Yeah, it's a really good
there you go.
description.
And I'm with Pete on this. We've got false propaganda is hardly novel, though.
Exactly.
Stalin, yeah.
And that's why I said, that's why I started with, how do we know? I think it's been going on all this time. So, yeah, thanks, Pete.
Yeah, hardly novel. Stalin blocked out all images of Trotsky during the 1917 revolution. Rugby Colin is here. Oh, there are some articles in the press, Colin, most popular cars in Portugal. We need to have a look at those together. If reality TV is entertainment, not just cheap TV, people watching must have boring lives. Bit judgmental, Colin. Maybe see you at the meetup tomorrow. You're going to pop along and see us. It was great to see you last time. Listening to you, beauties, while Girl from Ipanema plays in the background. It must be because we too are tall and tanned and young and lovely. Is that what
of course.
gave him the idea there?
I have no idea.
Okay, and even the Egyptians used false propaganda. They had a relationship to cats as well, didn't they? Even Egyptians used false propaganda. Maybe that was their downfall. I'm worried now. It was the cats. That's my latest Egyptian theory, is the cats that they revered so much. And you can see a mummified cat at the Birmingham Museum with the little ears.
Like going like this with its paw.
You can see the little ears in the mummification. Oh yeah,
and it's got its paw like that.
Well, I think the Egyptians became worried at some point that everything was being pushed off tables and smashed and scratched up, and catworms were everywhere, and that they locked themselves deep into the vaults and basements of Toblerone type buildings.
What, to hide the cats?
To escape the cats. I think that's the Egyptian pyramid mystery solved right there. In fact, so did the Etruscans. I think everyone who's describing what happens to someone else for their own benefit. I mean, that is just propaganda, and that's what we all do, isn't it? At some level.
Why I don't understand is why so many people believe what is put out there and told.
Well, do they?
As gospel.
Maybe they don't. Maybe they don't. You know, I think that's what Colin's saying, isn't it? That's what Pete seems to be saying, is, and James to some extent is like, this has always gone on. I get from you talking to you about this that it's reaching epidemic levels, and the cynicism around it is growing. But it was people kind of always knew, but now they're getting maybe a bit peed off about it. Photos were all to erase rivals from future memory in Portugal. That's interesting, isn't it? Yeah, and if we have a chance, I want to go to the latest plot twist in the recent political drama here in Portugal. I was researching it late into the night last night, into the early hours of this morning, and there's somebody calling it. Let me just tell you exactly what they said. The fall of the government is the worst attack in Portugal's democracy since the carnation, or since the dictatorship, and since April 25th. An April 25th hero. The law is being used to achieve political and military objectives, which I found slightly chilling, having watching the course of this unfold. And now that's the latest comment on it.
Not many people are talking about it.
It's the Portuguese deep state at work, though, isn't it?
The revolution, from what we hear about the revolution, it sounds like it was a really big event and a massive.
Well, there you go. That's a really
turner.
good. That is such a good example, Mrs. M, because that was an epoch-defining moment for Portugal.
Yes,
well documented.
And we say it's well documented, and it appears to be well documented. But do you remember when you were doing that episode?
I don't mean Philomena, well as in correctly.
You did an episode about it with Philomena, one of her pals, and then somebody who was a young man at the time when it all changed.
Saw a favourable side to it.
And you were expecting, I think everyone was expecting him to say, oh, it got so much better after this happened.
Yeah.
And actually his story was completely different. Everyone was like really shocked.
Yeah,
I remember
I
washing up
shocked.
listening to the story thinking,
But then when we think about it, we're not so shocked, are we? Because people's experiences are personal and nuanced. And I think there's a comment from João de Norte about this. Yes, I suspect most epoch-defining moments are only known in hindsight.
Hindsight, yeah.
That's what I was saying when I first started out this morning. It's like trying to look in the mirror to see the world, but not have you in it, which would make you a vampire, I know, in certain circles. But it is like that, isn't it? It's like looking into a mirror to see the world, hoping that you won't be there, taking yourself out of the picture. And I think you're absolutely right. That's part of the problem as well, isn't it? Is that we don't know when seismic things are happening because we don't want to believe it, and we want our old life to continue as normal. That's how it was in the pandemic, I think, wasn't it? New normal. Why can't we just go back to our old lives? There was a lot of that sort of talk, wasn't there?
Here's where I think it's at. Okay, you know when you're at school and you're tasked with writing a story, and Pete, you'll probably recognize this from the kids you've taught. But like you write a story, and after a while your story just becomes a jumble of words, and you back yourself into a corner where you can't really take your characters any further.
Yes.
And that's
so you have
when
to go with what
everyone,
you've got.
and that's when everyone all wakes up and it was just a bad dream. I suspect everyone that's watching this, we've all created this really elaborate dream with all these regular people that we meet up with every day.
Yeah.
And we're all probably just going to open our eyes one day and see that we're all in a psych ward next to each other.
That's a horrible outcome. That is not where I was expecting.
And we wake up and go,
it's you.
Oh my God, I just had a dream about you.
I'm not having that one. I'm not. That's not the future I had in mind. Thank you very much. Mind you, so the dangly mouse, this is when Gerald Denault saw his friend's Apple computer, his Apple II.
Wow.
It wasn't especially significant at the time, but yes, my goodness, Steve Jobs went on to become an incredible creator, did he not? And contributed to the culture that we are now living in. The digital age, Mrs. M, the world made by nerds and tech and digital people that we are in their world, aren't we? Let's face it. And that's what Martin, I think, was saying, the screen age. We are in a world created, I guess the medium is the message and all that sort of stuff. And when the tech people are creating the life we live according to how they make sense of life, don't we? So that we can never have to talk to anyone. We can order the food, the parcels, delivered to our door and never have to interact with anybody.
I was interviewed by Josh and Kaylee. Well, Kaylee from
Expats Everywhere.
Yeah, last week. Mm-hmm. And she was asking about the changes that I'd seen in the last 6 years and also as somebody who's lived abroad before, what are the differences? And one of the things that I mentioned was, we don't have to really connect with the local culture anymore, which sounds really awful. But we, like people that move now, they move with their cloud, don't they?
Oh, that's like expat 2.0. The digital expat can just recreate their life here.
I mean, you just pick up your you don't have to turn on a radio or a TV anymore because you can watch everything.
Get what you want.
In the way you want to watch it.
When you want to watch it.
Yeah. You can watch things with translations. So for instance, I use the Portuguese internet, obviously like Portuguese websites, but immediately I'll read a lot of it. I can read a lot of it, but I will right click and translate it to English when there are bits that I don't get or when I want to make sure that the delivery instructions are right.
Yeah.
But, we don't even need to, call up a cab anymore because in so many parts of like the cities in Portugal, you've got Uber. So like in Porto, in Lisbon, in Coimbra, I think, have they got it in Coimbra?
Yeah, well, it's I imagine the trend is towards more rather than less of that.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have Uber in this area, but like the moment we go to around Lisbon, I fire it up. I don't look for a local cab number. I literally go to
gravitate
Uber.
Towards ease.
If we wanted a takeout, we could just go to. I mean, not that I've ever called food in that way, but that is
a click away.
Exactly. You don't have to interact at all in any other language if you choose not to. And I think that's going to, if anything, our existence is just becoming a lot more homogenized and less, I'm not trying to like sell a dystopian view or anything any more than usual.
Make a value judgment.
But like being an expat now is very different to how it was like when I was 25 years ago when I was living in France.
It's so easy now, isn't it?
Everything was in French.
And you used to go to the phone box, didn't you?
Yeah.
Have the right amount of. So you bought stamps to send letters home.
Yeah, I had a phone card.
And you had a phone card. That was quite modern in its time, wasn't it? And then you would ring your parents on a Sunday night or something.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and that was when they got to speak to you. Oh, how lovely. Okay, follow the money. And also, yes, thank you, John. We'll play your rendition of Mother Goose, the misty, moisty moment.
It's one of your favourite words, isn't it, moist?
I wouldn't say that. I mean, I'm not afraid of using it, as some people are.
Like some words just kind of feel good as you say them.
To me, moist feels good, tastes good. Yeah. Follow the money, says James. Who benefits most when people don't know what fact and what is fiction? Confused people are more easily manipulated. And great question from Sarah. The question becomes, which ones of us are confused? Mrs. M, you wanted to respond to that, didn't you?
All of us.
Go on, say more.
I remember years and years ago, we were in the UK and we were watching one of those New Year programs, and it was about controlled opposition and also about layering information. Who was it? That guy that did a rundown of the year ahead?
Oh, Charlie Booker. Was it Screen Wipe?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, okay.
And that was the first time I'd really come up against the idea of controlled opposition, although I realised that most people play it out like parents play good cop, bad cop, don't they? So why it only occurred to me that it was a thing when I watched that programme. But I've observed now, what's happened is like my views have gone from one side to another side over and then back again and then back again. I've been very seesawy for many years, because I know something, then I learned that the next thing is here. Actually, what I'm now learning is there's information put out on all different levels and different spectrums, and you can't really trust anything. This is the time to come in. This is the time to learn how to discern. This is the time to learn how to judge things.
Another aspect of this epoch.
It's time for us to start to go back into discernment and to not trust everything that you're told.
Thank you. Okay, this is what I'm looking for this morning. Are we in an epoch-defining moment? What is that epoch? What is it made of? And what can we do about it? So I like that, Mrs. M.
I think it's the time for us to come out of the collective
through the
confusion.
Earlier thing you were talking about. Yeah. Okay. So we thought life was one way. We're realizing it's not. That's made us a bit confused. And the way out of confusion is to bring some clarity, and the human faculty for doing that is to apply discernment to a situation.
What is just how sweet humans are.
What they will believe. They will tend to believe.
We will believe whatever people tell us.
Two things, right? Because there is that. If we join the dots here, we are lovely like that, aren't we?
And we want to think the best of people.
Ideally we want to think the best of people, and we want to avoid pain.
Yeah.
And we seek pleasure.
Yeah.
So all of that leads us in a certain direction, which you could argue is where we're at, and it's maybe coming apart a little bit, where we have been a little bit too much pleasure seeking and pain avoiding, and not doing some things that we needed to do, and just I don't need to worry about that.
Because, also, humans tend to be happier when they're part of a group and when they feel accepted. So that's also being manipulated. We're sweet social creatures.
No one cares anymore today. Now that everyone is, now that families and workplaces have all been divided, people are getting used to, I suppose, feeling like they don't belong anymore.
Yeah.
Certainly in some communities where their views are polarized in relation to other people's.
Well, I think we're so sweet that once we have a realization about something, we usually go to completely the opposite view.
Yeah.
Because then we really want to know the truth, and we really want to help to be sweet and get back into our belonging.
Not double down, but half the difference.
And so the real difficulty is, for people who find themselves very much in the middle and not really going down any route, you lose that sense of belonging because there are fewer people doing it.
All right, if this has all got too philosophical and conceptual for you, here are some big waves. Okay, and we'll come back. We'll conclude with this, but we've got some other things to talk about this morning. Here are some big waves around, so you can see where we are right now. This is quite extraordinary today. There we go. That's better, isn't it? Live from Nazaré, and allegedly the right time of year, the right place to be to see the big waves, and they are looking pretty terrifying to me anyway. Mrs. M was here and gasping at the glory and the sheer drama and scale of these waves. I don't know how well you're seeing it. That's the classic angle, isn't it, here, and where a lot of people view from. And you can see the crowds are beginning to gather here now, and there are some big waves, and there is one crazy duo out there, I think, a jet ski pilot, perhaps doing a recce at the moment, with maybe a surfer on the back. I'm not sure. I couldn't see a surfboard, but I could see a couple of guys out on a jet ski, maybe just taking a look. But the waves are definitely getting up. It's very mild here, really comfortable temperature, a little bit windy, and a lot of white water, as you can see here, everywhere you look. Turbulence, tidal turbulence, magnificent. It's so dramatic, it's almost like unreal, and you can see the waves crashing over there by the viewing point on the north beach of Nazaré, Praia do Norte. There's quite a few people gathering at the top there. Shall I zoom in a bit and see if we can see things a bit closer? There you go, you see a few figures up on the top there. And let's see if we can catch a bigger wave for you. get the zoom. That's it. Sorry, it's so probably grainy, but I just want to give you a sense of the scale of these waves. Let's see if we can catch one with the camera as it comes in. Here you go. That looks pretty awesome, doesn't it? Actually, I'll stick around by the rocks there so you get a sense of scale as well. Look at that. Amazing when it crashes against the rocks. It's hard to not just stand here in silence and awe of these waves here. Look at that. Yeah, I think I'm just going to go home and get my wetsuit and my board and come out because this looks just so much fun. More waves dashing against the rocks over at the viewing point there. Well, what a pleasure to share with you the view here today at Nazaré. Have a great day and a great weekend wherever you are.
Nice shot of your new daps.
I think all live videos end like that, don't they?
Yeah.
They begin with, oh, is this thing pointing the right way? Oh, sorry, that's not what I meant to do. And then at the end, a picture of everyone's shoes. And you're right. I mean, James, the camera couldn't do it justice, but it was amazing, wasn't it, Mrs. M, last Friday?
Yeah, well, you could see it once. I mean, James is right, but when you zoomed in and you can see the waves compared to the people,
yeah,
that's when I started.
Yeah,
to
they
get
were a bit
like,
bigger than 2 meters, weren't
yeah,
they?
they were massive.
I mean, they weren't the biggest that they can be at Nazaré, but they were very impressive. Morning, Paul. Good to see you here this morning. No one sees the world the same, and we treasure that unique perception of yours. P.S. Slowly starting to feel better. Glad to hear that. Melhoras, amigo. Lots of love to you in the Algarve. And Joel de Nort, we're all cavemen. We'll hear him sing in a minute. And cave women at heart. Avoid pain, seek pleasure, provide, protect family, secure food, shelter, and comfort. Acquire the means, power to maintain the above. That's a pretty good analysis, isn't it?
It is really good.
I think. And it all depends, I suppose, on the amount of finesse and respect we can garner in that process, I suppose, which makes for a civilization or not. Hello from France. Liz, good morning to you. Well, I guess seeing is believing is becoming obsolete. Yes, I was wanting to say something about this, Liz. Thank you for being here this morning. It's becoming obsolete. But at the same time, people are more aware of this precisely because the very same technology that makes this happen also helps them back up the decisions of what could or could not be true. Very good. And the lovely images of Nazaré.
It's very confusing, isn't
well
it?
said, Liz.
It's really beautiful what she's written there.
Yeah, let's see what the great philosopher Joel de Nort is saying to us in this sent through on 913-590-303.
Have you listened to this already?
No.
It might be a personal.
It was a misty, moisty morning.
Oh, yeah.
And foggy was the weather. I chanced to meet an old man, all dressed in leather. He began to compliment, and I began to grin. How do you do? How do you do? And how do you do again?
That's lovely.
It's beautiful. He's getting towards Lee Marvin there, though, isn't he?
I think
I was born under a wandering star. I'd love to hear your version of that, John Joel de Nort.
I think he should be narrating books.
He's got a beautiful
I'd love
voice.
to go to bed listening to him.
I'd buy those. I'd buy those misty, moisty mornings of men dressed in leather. Who doesn't
like that in the morning?
Revenge of the Nerds, not the 80s movie. We're actually living in it. Okay. I knew messing with them would be as dangerous as messing with the aliens. They brought us into their world, hooked us up to gadgets, apps, and now that we're all in, they will have the last lengthy laugh. Who doesn't like a lengthy laugh first thing in the morning? However, it's not all doom and gloom. Whoever you are, F you, Facebook user, they feel ostracized from society. Let's bring them back into the fold. So hug a nerd today.
Yeah.
Some general love and attention should solve the problem. That's the answer to everything, isn't it? I'm glad we are saying that this morning, or you are, whoever you are. And William Ogilvy, we won't be coerced or manipulated. Too old and long in the tooth.
We've had some good conversations.
Yeah, good chats. You always have a good chat with William. Chill, smash that like button. Good to see you here, William.
Yeah.
Let's encourage the ladies to date more nerds. Do you think that's a good strategy?
I have dated nerds.
And how did it go? Obviously not very well, because you didn't stick
I've
around or get what?
I've got a broadcasting nerd.
Really? Is that how you see me?
No,
that's the biggest revelation for me this morning. Then, okay. Yeah, there is a problem, isn't there? With again, it sort of becomes, it can so easily become polarized and judgmental, can't it? You know, this thing about nerds or not nerds. But I think we get the point, don't we? That people who've been disenfranchised but now feel power, which I think that is what that Facebook user comment articulates there.
Actually, you're the one that's I'm the nerd in our relationship.
Exactly.
I'm the
didn't
nerd.
like to say. It has been said that we'll believe it when we see it, but actually we see it when we believe it.
Yes.
And maybe,
yes.
And is there not a sweet spot where it's a bit of both? You know, the yin and the yang. You know, that biting point, sweet spot of like where it's a bit of both, and it's a powerful moment where both are true. There are nerds of all sexes and orientations.
Yeah, I am definitely the nerd of our family, aren't I?
He's got to go and change society after inspiring conversations here this morning. And true love is always the answer, says James. Yeah, right. I'm glad we came to that this morning in this discussion, and not some other polarized mess.
Yeah, I was never wanting to go down a polarized mess route.
No one likes that in the morning or any time of day.
It's just not. It's not helpful, is it?
Not necessarily.
I've received a few messages.
Have you?
Yeah.
On this matter?
No, I've received a message actually this morning.
What, your dry cleaning's ready? What?
Or you can take our cats in to have their nuts. Like,
oh, okay.
No.
And if we get more gumpers, we get a discount to do the same?
No.
Not the people, they're cats.
I received a message. I'm not going to say who sent it, but somebody who's watching today sent me a message about their own experience of adoption.
Of cat or of themselves?
No, of themselves.
Oh, right, okay.
Their own adoption family story. Thank you for sending me that message.
Oh, wow. Okay. Thank you very much for that. Bon dia Malta from Bayrandi, just back from a warm walk, very mild, isn't it, at the moment, through the Bayrada, and greeted back by the mighty Nazaré Ocean. Our pleasure. Go on, Mrs.
May I read out your message that you sent me on my show on Thursday, and I'll do it anonymously if that's what.
I don't know what
you'd like.
Are you talking about?
I'm talking to the person
Mama
that's just
Bear.
sent me
Okay,
the
Mama Bear
message.
is not here this morning in the departure lounge, but I have a little small in memoriam to do, and you have something to say about a situation pertaining to somebody with somebody who passed on, a parent who passed on in the UK. Is that right?
Yeah.
Tell us.
Well, I received a message from a friend who lives obviously in Portugal, from the UK, and without like indicating who it is at all, she's saying, I'm in the UK. My mother died 30th of October peacefully in her sleep. Just me and my brother, lots to do. I would like to get this message out somehow to all those with aging parents on their own in the UK, with their next of kin living abroad. It's absolutely disgusting. Not one person from any authority has contacted to tell us that our mother had died. Not the police, not the hospital, not the doctor's surgery, not age concern. Even the place where we are having the wake are not allowed to call international telephone numbers. The police had to knock my mother's door down in order to find her. The alarm was raised by a carer who couldn't get into the house. We only found out because the police went through my mother's address book, found that one of her surnames corresponded with a man with a particular name who lives a couple of miles from her. This man is my dad. And they divorced 50 years ago. So she received the message that her mother had died. From
the estranged partner.
Partner of 50 years.
Yeah.
And her brother also lived abroad as well, lives, in the other side of Europe.
So what this person wants to share is the fact that the authorities in the UK will not be ringing. If you may assume that you're the next of kin, but you may not be contacted by as a kind of policy of some of the
and
authorities in the UK who will not ring abroad.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
she stressed in her message to me that is in the area that she lives. So I think that's the Greater London area and Kent and possibly Essex. It's like the southeast,
the home counties.
Yeah, and
that
it might be different.
Sounds like a pretty grim policy, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it might be different in other parts. So I think you know, if you have an ailing parent. And maybe don't have siblings or anyone that is connected to them in the UK that can call you.
Yeah.
It's important to think about what you might want to do in the event of a parent passing away.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, I'm guessing this is something that you'll be talking to Mama Bear about, because all of us at some point will pass away.
Yeah.
And it goes back the other way.
Well, that's why we dare talk about it, because it makes sense to make plans, doesn't it? And especially so when you're in a culture that you don't understand. So you know, it's difficult at the best of times to face a bereavement and manage that. And then when you're in a foreign country, it's even worse. So we recommend people be prepared. And this is another aspect of that preparation, is that when you've moved away, and we know the difficulty of that, just the difficulty of moving away from elderly parents in another part of the world, that's pretty awkward in its own right, or can be. And then this added complication that we've just heard about, that you won't necessarily be told or phoned by the people who have you as the next of kin if you live abroad. So be aware of that and make arrangements to make that as I suppose as easy as possible when that worst case scenario happens. So thank you for sharing that.
I mean, she was definitely listed as next of kin. That's the shocking
But they would
thing.
not call abroad.
They wouldn't call an international number.
Right.
I don't see why they couldn't have sent an email. I mean,
I imagine it's a resource issue. It's a resource issue that they don't want to be tracking people. I don't know, but I imagine it's something to do with.
You'd think in these days where everyone's connected, everyone's ideas all over the internet.
Yes,
it would be quite simple to do.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that with us for the benefit, albeit in horrible circumstances and situations. But thank you for letting us know that, and lots of love to you at your awful time for you as well. Thank you for sharing that with us. Okay, talking of passing on, I went to the funeral of somebody whose passing I mentioned last week. It was Chris Price, the winemaker, the wine eccentric, who I loved meeting. I have in my mind an expat hall of fame, amazing people who came to Portugal, who made quite the contribution in their life, in their daily life, and in the grander gestures of their life. And this man I found out from the memorial that I went to on Saturday, and I want to write a full-length obituary in the Portugal Resident about Chris, because he was such an amazing contribution to this society and to our community. He represented us well as foreigners coming to Portugal, and this is when I met up with him to do a wine tasting here in San Martinho. I'd met him in the year or two before that. Do you remember, Mrs. M? We were driving up near to Cortain, where he established his winery. Yep. And are you Chris? We saw him, didn't we, pottering about on the Ridge Road there? And he said, "You, Carl." And we started chatting, and we created something of a great friendship. And so it was always great to see him, and the twinkle in his eye, and the plans he had. And we were going to make podcasts and films about what he'd done here. And it was amazing to hear his story of coming to Portugal not that long ago, actually. I think it was 2007. Began growing grapes, harvesting them, making wine, and he was actually bottling wine a year later after buying a ruin and renovating that, as well as creating a vineyard. And this is where it was in Cortain. The best way we found to honor him, Mrs. M, right, was to open a bottle of his wine on Saturday night. Yeah. And this was the cork, wasn't it, in that wine? Life is too short to drink bad wine. It was like a lovely little last word from Chris, wasn't it?
Yeah, really fantastic.
And we have been enjoying his Cortain wines in these last few days. I bought 3 bottles, and it's just the whole story of Cortain is quite amazing, of a man and Helga, his wife, came to Portugal to grow wine. And I hope Helga will continue in some way to create and produce wine and share it with the world in his memory. So remembering Chris Price here, I will write more about him to bring more of his fabulous story to you when the time is right in the Portugal Resident. So the message from Chris there: life is too short to drink bad wine. And there he was recommending to me a local wine from Alcobaça. We went, I think we had a a French Chardonnay going head to head with a Portuguese white, and the Portuguese. Chris was absolutely right. The Portuguese white was superb, and I still drink that recommendation to this day from Alcobaça Capuchos, I think it's called. So rest in peace, and thank you so much, Chris, for your wonderful legacy here in Portugal and among this community here. Drink Cortain wine, folks, if you can get your hands on some, and honour Chris. Okay, last few thoughts then this morning on what we've been talking about this morning. Are we in an what do you think now, Mrs. M, after some talk about it? Has your view changed? Is it deepened? Are we in an epoch-defining moment? I know it's hard to tell from what when you're living in it, it's hard to tell, but do you get a sense that we are?
I feel like things are speeding up at the moment. A lot of people that like from my own experience, it just feels like things are getting faster and faster and faster and faster.
Yeah.
And it feels like things are also unraveling a little bit, like things are coming apart at the seams a little bit.
Yeah.
My sense is that we're coming to the first part of a conclusion.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think there's a lot more that we're going to be learning about. I just think I don't know.
So I get the sense of the characteristics that you're seeing, anticipating, and we can perhaps assume that we are, from your point of view, in an epoch-defining moment. Thanks to everyone else for their comments.
Yeah.
The second part of the question was, if we are in an epoch-defining moment post-pandemic, with all sorts of strife going on around the world. I mean, there always has been, but it seems to be. I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? There seems to be an increase in volume of geopolitical, geophysical strife, seismic activity. Everything is like scaled up. And of course, we have to bear in mind what Liz was saying and what the nerds have done for us. They've brought it to our attention in a way that we weren't so aware of it.
Yeah.
But whether there is more or we're just more aware of it, it's certainly our experience that there seems to be a lot of tumultuous, turbulent activity at the moment, heralding something intrinsically being life-altering for people. A baddie in our own community is on standby to evacuate from Iceland because of the volcanic activity over there. The second part of the question was, if we are in an epoch-changing moment, what does that mean for expats in Portugal, for the foreigners, for the immigrants who are here? Thank you, Will, for reminding me of that. And for Will, I'd say it means you choose wisely, with some sort of poignant words there. I wasn't expecting Will to be here this morning. I'm very glad you are, Will. Country-wise, I mean off-grid, even better. So somewhat apocalyptic, you might say, to get off-grid. Will seems to be taking that at face value, that we are in a changing,
I think there's a couple of things we need to do.
Turbulent time. Go on.
I think, like getting your resources sorted out. I mean, there's no way we can do our life off grid, not as is at the moment. We've missed that boat. However, I think like understanding things about basic survival and getting food stores, having seeds, like all those things that if you had to start life again,
you lot.
but all those things that we might need, like those skills that maybe our grandparents had. It's really, really important. But I think there's a much bigger piece.
They weren't preppers, though, were they? They were resourceful.
No, that's just how they lived.
Yeah, exactly. And that to me, that seems
they weren't reliant. They weren't reliant.
They were self-reliant. They were. I think they were intercommunal.
Yeah.
They were ready, and they were resourceful, and they were functional in a way that we might aspire to. Which that's why I stopped short of this prepping thing, because it just seems so ready for a certain kind of scenario that seems very unattractive. However, living in the countryside, preparing a lot of your own food, back full circle to Pete picking his own plump fruit and tickling it,
lovely.
And then pressing olive oil. More of that, right? More of that, because that's intercommunal as well and interdependent.
I also think there's another bigger piece, actually, that's more important, and that is just to enjoy the life we have to the best of our ability. Because like all of these scenarios that we're talking about, it's nothing that any of us can actually control. I mean, apart from like, if you're a prepper and you've got all of your ducks in a row, that gives you as much control as it gives you more control over your life than other people have over theirs.
Yes.
Which is helpful. But by and large, if our society is premised on a lot of things that's not true,
or may disappear.
or made
Yeah.
then like we have no controls over our life, so the only thing we can control is how we live it
and how we respond and react. Yeah.
So I think that's the other piece, is just, you know, to
Well, I like that.
live the best life you can.
Are you doing a barefoot broadcast? Do I need to hurry?
No.
Okay, good.
No.
Right, I'm just checking. Okay, and gotta go says, oh no, hold on a minute. William says, I believe in the present climate, more people are beginning to prep. Looking back at what my parents did in the 60s, there are some disadvantages that come with modern technology.
Yeah,
we'll agreeing with
definitely.
that. Though, yeah, you two get a bunker. Gotta go. One question, if you don't mind. Does anyone have a lawyer I can borrow? Turns out I'm not allowed to represent myself. That sounds ominous, Will. And my suggestion to you would be to get in touch with the team. Do you remember the dentist who took quite a stand against the lockdown measures in Portugal? She seemed like quite a lone voice and a very inspiring woman who took offence to quite a lot of the impositions of the lockdown and was challenging the government and creating all sorts of great webinars and speakers online. Many of whom, it has to be said, whilst they were dismissed for being whatever they were, ridiculous or treasonous or outrageous. Many of what the messages that they shared seem to have ring a little bit truer in subsequent times. I would ask her, refer to her and that group of people who presumably are also representing themselves in some way or other. So I don't know what else to suggest with that. You need a lawyer who wants that to take on that kind of cause, I think, don't you? Who's supportive to your cause and presumably will pro bono as well. T-Duck just in, and whilst we were talking about getting the ducks in a row, because I think that is the final message to leave today. Whether you are preparing physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, is to get those ducks in a row. It is, isn't it? It's being in the right shape to respond, isn't it? However you see fit and whatever you think is coming, and whether there's nothing coming, it's just business as usual or not. Joelle Denot, thank you for sharing this. My mum passed earlier this month. This would be the departure lounge ordinarily. Mama Bear not with us, but thank you for sharing this, Joelle. My siblings, me and my siblings were able to be in touch with her weekly. How lovely. The nursing staff also kept my eldest brother appraised weekly. We were even alerted when her end was imminent. That sounds well managed. It sounds awful as well, of course, to have your mum pass, and in the circumstances, it sounds like you and to be so far away. But it sounds like you managed it brilliantly, as I observe you do. We are a great admirer of how you go about things, John. The only things we control are our own thoughts, words, and actions. Ultimately, that is about getting the ducks in a row, isn't it? And for me, you know, the idea of going off grid. How about going off grid? Mentally, emotionally, there is a very, I find, a very seductive, attractive grid of this, you know, of these messages of what's going on in the world. It can appeal to some of our less attractive instincts, I think, can't it? On the one hand, our survival instinct, we want to know what's going on so we can prepare, and then whilst doing that, we can get really derailed, undermined, and affected by it, because we are great as well, aren't we? We want the best, and we are noble and in part as well. And some of these things really offend and upset us, and quite rightly too. The moment is when it becomes widely apparent we don't have a democracy. So, Will perhaps is extending what you were saying, Mrs. M, that the illusion of democracy will go just like the illusion of entertainment and news gathering,
of course,
is there.
So, you know, it makes you wonder about the power of the legal system as well.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and some poignant thinkers here this morning. Thank you for that.
I mean, that's why we do the barefoot broadcast.
Yes,
you know, it's so that irrespective of all of this that's going on right now, we can find a way to come together and to reimagine,
whether it's going on or not. Because there's the thing, right? Even if there is nothing going on, even if this isn't a defining epoch, how beautiful it is for people to come together and talk about the things that inspire, love, and support them.
And share our sort of beautiful, like, heart thoughts for each other, and things like that.
Something edifying, something discerning, as you mentioned before.
Something that might help us, you know, deal with any of the madness that may appear to be going on right now.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you.
And of course, we've been doing that for like 13 years.
We have, haven't we? It's how we
Yeah,
roll, I would like to
yeah.
think. If you want the government to be like your parents, expect to be treated like children. I can't argue with that.
Yeah.
Can't argue with that.
But
It's
I
a
mean-
trade-off some people are prepared to make.
But I mean, the question I have for you, Jonathan, I agree with you completely. But what happens if you don't want the government in the first place? What happens if you just, consider yourself to be adult enough to make your own decisions and to live by the consequences of your life?
I hear another can of worms being opened, which I cannot allow right now at 10:05. Stop it. Okay, these are great thoughts to share, aren't they? Aspire for peace, love, and happiness. Thank you, Squire. I want that lady as my dentist. I know two great dentists, believe it or not, here in Portugal. She's one of them. The blessing I so often offer is, may you know love, joy, and peace always.
Yeah.
James,
nice.
you lovely man. Jackie, hi all. When I get out there in spring, I plan on using a 12-volt. We got all the preppers and the off-gridders coming out of the closet now.
Fantastic.
12-volt and solar system, as it's what I'm used to having lived on a narrow boat for many years. It's great.
Yeah.
Well, send me a message, unless I've blocked you on every possible channel.
Well, to be,
I'm sure there's a way of
fair,
getting
that was with a lot of provocation.
I'm sure we can get that her name to you. Get out and experience things in person. Yes, Sarah. It's often different than what is portrayed online.
Yes,
it is,
Sarah.
isn't it? Now, who did I send that to? Somebody sent it to me, and I sent it on to Bobby. And it was, got any decent fatherly advice for me, says the boy. Yeah, son. We aren't divided as the media portrays everyday people. Talk to a neighbor, co-worker, or stranger that doesn't look like you. You'd be surprised how nice people are in person. To resonate with what you're saying there, Sarah, and hope for the best. Thank you, you lovely gumpers. We took on a big subject this morning, and it's not ended because this is an ongoing thing, isn't it? But we're concluding the show for today, and this is a beautiful conclusion. So thank you, you wonderful people. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. And do you know what I'm going to do now, Mrs. M?
What?
I'm going to poignantly put in that video now.
Which one?
Because the thirst for freedom overcame all fears. Now, whatever romanticized notion we might have about the revolution, this came out of my research into it. And, it is hijacked for all sorts of political agendas. And we'll see that next year, won't we, on the 50th anniversary of the Carnation Revolution. Mantra of the optimistic pessimist. Yeah, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. Wise words from Claire today. I'm not seeing Claire, am I? It's simple, easy, and not as expensive as people think. 12-volt water filtration is cheap when using 12-volt methods designed for caravans and boats. Thank you, Jackie. We need to get you on the show to share that, because actually the Barefoot broadcast, the Good Morning Portugal show, was a lot about preparedness, wasn't it, in the early days, and homesteading and everything. And then this happened, which I'm not at all unhappy about. It's been wonderful to be here pondering this morning. And we will go with the thirst for freedom overcame all fears, because I think it's a useful and transferable concept as a way of concluding the show after a last word from Mrs. M.
Just have a great day.
How beautiful. All right. Thanks, everybody. Take care and bye for now. And we'll see you tomorrow with an AMA about AI, and Raquel will be with us. Talk about preparing, hoping for the best and preparing for the worst, starting a business in Portugal. Ciao for now.
On the 25th of April, the MFA announced that the people should remain at home because they feared armed confrontations on the street. But the Portuguese population clearly disobeyed the military orders to stay at home because the thirst for freedom overcame all fears. And so people took the streets to the thousands and supported the military coup to force the resignation of the leader of the regime. The people brought red carnations and distributed them to the soldiers, who stuck them in their rifle barrels, making the flower the symbol of the revolution. The revolutionary process of 74 and 75 was one of the liveliest experiences in Portuguese history. In 19 months, there were 2 failed coups, 6 provisional governments, the process of independence of the colonies, several mass strike waves, demonstrations, occupations of thousands of houses, a profound agricultural reform, occupations of land, the creation of workers' cooperatives, workers' councils, trade unions, neighborhood commissions, self-managed factories, businesses, offices, newspapers, and radios. because the thirst for freedom overcame all fears.